Before we get very far into our next story, we do have a warning for you tonight. What you're about to see and hear may not be suitable for children. Tonight, take a walk in their world.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Transpicuous News, January 23rd. We got one story, but it's a really big story, and it's a rabbit hole. If you haven't looked into this topic, it's a definite rabbit hole. I want to say thanks to my buddy Dave Hodgson for throwing the first salvo out at me first thing this morning. Hadn't even had a proper cup of coffee yet when this landed in front of me. It sent me spiraling down a rabbit hole. We are going to talk about the Arctic today. Now, any of you guys who've been following Transpicuous News and my work know that this is an ongoing subject. The Arctic and the Antarctic always seems to come up. It's like, you know, the two poles, pardon my pun, that just keep, if one's in the news, then it's the next one in the news. So we're going to start off in one place, but we're going to ask the big questions. So the article we're going to talk about is out of Zero Hedge yesterday. The U.S. Coast Guard adds cruise missiles to icebreakers as battle for the Arctic begins. First of all, the battle's not just beginning. This battle's been going on for quite a while. But let's just take it, we'll take this at surface. We'll just take it from what they say. The United States Coast Guard is preparing to equip icebreaker vessels operating in the Arctic region with high-tech cruise missiles for the first time, as Washington escalates geopolitical tensions with Russia. I love the way they actually say the fact that it's Washington escalating geopolitical tensions, because that's what it is, right? But I digress. Hold on. This is such a rabbit hole, such a rabbit hole. And like I said, I've been following this for years. So I'm going to take you on a little journey. It's going to be a longer than usual short news clip. Okay, so the Coast Guard's newest fleet of heavy icebreakers would be designed to carry cruise missiles. Former Navy Captain Jerry Hendricks, senior associate at the Washington-based Center for New American Security, said, "This is not just about new icebreakers. This is part of a broader competition just below the surface. We've been able to find offsets to drive down the cost and reserve the space, weight, and power necessary to fully weaponize these and make these a capable, these meaning the new ships, capable platform offensively. In the event this world changes in the next 5, 10, even 15 years from now." So that's one piece. So in the event the world changes. So here's the questions. Well, hold on. Let's go. Hold on here. While the situation in the Arctic presents many difficulties for Washington and its allies in the region, the U.S. has unofficially kicked off a weapons race with Russia for the control of the Arctic and its vast natural resources reserves, with the decision to strap on cruise missiles onto their icebreakers. Now, that's the rhetoric. Always look for the rhetoric. What's the agenda they're trying to push? So it's about natural resources. So I'm about to blow that out of the water. So just bear with us a second. Okay. So natural resources. When you read anything about the Arctic, anything on these topics, it always gets to the, oh, it's natural resources, because, you know, the Arctic is so incredibly rich with oil and natural gas. It's just abundance all over the place. And yet. Okay, let's go back a few years. Okay. 2015, Shell quits the Arctic. Sorry, back again. Dog issues. So when Shell said that they were going to leave the Arctic for good, and that was a big thing, we're done, we're leaving for good. I was just like, oh, what's going on in the Arctic? And because the numbers are important. After investing 10 years and $7 billion, Shell said on Monday that it would shelve plans to tap the potentially vast oil reserve, leaving for the foreseeable future. The announcement is a major setback for the oil giant, which had hoped for the largest cache of oil on Earth, but instead found a series of accidents, errors, misadventures that scared off competitors and could, in effect, cordon off the Arctic for good. I want you to keep that in mind. Accidents, errors, misadventures that scared off the competitors and could cordon off the Arctic for good. Now, Shell wasn't the only one. Shell wasn't the only one. This is 2015. Right after this, okay? In September, Shell isn't the only one leaving the Arctic. It gives you a list. ConocoPhillips got rid of all of its leases in the Kentucky Sea. Statoil, which is the third major leaseholder in Kentucky, announced on November that it was giving up its leases in the basin and closing its Alaska office. This is a Norwegian company. It let go of its 16 leases. It hadn't submitted an exploration plan, but it had conducted seismic and archaeological surveys of Kentucky. Okay, wait a second. Archaeological surveys of a sea, an Arctic sea? Just give me a second. So, other companies that have dropped their offshore Arctic leases include Total, Eni, Encana, and Armstrong and Iona. They're freaking fleeing. Now, important date. Between July 2012 and April of this year, these companies and Shell have relinquished a total of 376 leases in the Kentucky and Beaufort Seas in the Arctic. 2012 is when this started. Okay, so first of all, let's just ask, an archaeological survey? So an archaeological survey is a field survey that's done to search for archaeological sites and collect information about the location, distribution, and organization of past human cultures across a large area. Archaeologists use a variety of tools in a survey including GIS, GPS, remote sensing, geophysical survey, and aerial photography. So right off the hop, I got to say, okay, an oil company who's going to drill in the Arctic. Now, geological surveys? Absolutely. Of course they would have to do those. Archaeological surveys, though? It's a question. But now let's go back to this whole thing. 2012, all these companies started leaving in 2012. Well, let's take a look at, oh, and that was the other one. The only one that was left, when this article was written, the only one left was Repsol. And guess what? Months later, they fucking left the area too. So, what's going on here? Now, I'm missing one of my, oh, okay, hold on. Before we get to this part, let's just keep following along with the bit about the leases, okay, and the oil here. So right after that, 10/16/2015, the Interior Department of the U.S. cancels the Arctic offshore lease sales. In light of current market conditions and low market industry interest, the U.S. Department of the Interior today announced that it will cancel the 2 potential Arctic offshore lease sales scheduled under the 5-year program. Suspended, who knows, for however long. Right after that, 2016. Note the date, December 2016. So December 2016, just before Obama leaves office, him and Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, sign a huge joint Arctic leaders statement. Follow on this one. Today, President Obama and Prime Minister Trudeau are proud to announce the launch of actions to ensuring a strong, sustainable, and viable Arctic economy and ecosystem with low-impact shipping, science-based management of marine resources, free from the risks of offshore oil and gas activity. The U.S. is designating the vast majority of U.S. waters in the Kentucky and Beaufort Seas as indefinitely off limits to offshore oil and gas leasing. Canada is designating all Arctic Canadian waters as indefinitely off limits to future offshore Arctic oil and gas licensing, but is to be reviewed every 5 years. Now, they do like to talk, it's all about, oh, we're trying to preserve the fish. And our native peoples, our northern native peoples. And if you believe that shit, you're smoking way too much fucking crack, because neither the American nor the Canadian government give a rat's ass about marine animals or our First Nations. As a Canadian, I can promise you that, okay? The U.S. Coast Guard is launching a port access route study in the Beaufort and Kentucky Seas. Results from this analysis may be used to establish vessel routing measures, including traffic separation schemes, recommended routes, areas to be avoided, and other instruments such as fairways where no structures may be erected. U.S. commits to supporting and strengthening existing commercial fishing closures in the Beaufort and Kentucky Seas, and to conducting scientific research to improve our understanding of the Arctic. Now, on the surface, like I said, looks all plushy, fun. Oh, aren't they just wonderful people for all the work they're doing? Which is all bullshit, because there's an agenda behind this. Now, then we have Donald Trump comes into power. A couple of months later, one of the first things he did was to reopen the Arctic offshore oil. Completely reversing, Trump signed an executive order Friday. This is April 27th, 2017. To reverse President Barack Obama's policy preventing exploration in a region that environmental groups warn is too sensitive to risk an ecological disaster. So he says he's going to open up offshore drilling again. Yep. Because of the money. They need the money. They want the oil. Okay. We're going to get back to this. Oil companies started leaving in 2012. 2014 was the last oil season that Shell and these other major companies operated in. Okay, now let's take a look at something. Okay, what we have here is the price of oil per barrel. In 2012, okay, and 13, the price of oil was at the highest it had been in ages. Now, if these companies were leaving the Arctic because they couldn't make any money, I have another dog issue apparently. Group, off you go. Go play. If they couldn't make money with oil at $110 and $100 and $90 a barrel, we're now looking at oil that fell down in 2016, of course, down to like 45, 35, and 40 a barrel. Okay? But the levels have only risen to about 60. And the latest market scope out of Moody's is saying that price for 2018, oil barrel price, between $40 and $60 a barrel. It ain't going to get any better than that. So if they couldn't make money at $90 to $100 to $110 a barrel, are they really going to be going back into the Arctic to do oil drilling at $40 to $60 a barrel? No. So let's take the entire statement that they're doing this to make, they're protecting the assets of the oil and the natural gas. They're protecting those assets, and that's why they're arming the Coast Guard. Let's just take that off the table, because we've just basically disproved that completely. No one's going to drill oil there because they can't afford to. So let's talk about the unique role of the U.S. Coast Guard, because this is, again, one of those little ones. There was a little piece in this that I did not know. Until recently, the U.S. Coast Guard was under the Department of Transport. Recent legislation has moved the Coast Guard to the newly created Department of Homeland Security. Yeah, it's an older article, obviously. However, the Coast Guard is considered a military service because during times of war or conflict, the President of the United States can transfer any or all assets of the Coast Guard to the Department of the Navy. In fact, this has been done in almost every single conflict that the United States have ever been involved in. The Coast Guard is commanded by a 4-star admiral known as the Coast Guard Commandant. Now, so here we have Coast Guard ships are going to be armed with basically cruise missiles, and God knows what kind. This could arguably be a statement saying that basically the United States is working under martial law rule. This would be a very strong argument in the fact of the statement being made that they're going to arm with weapons of mass destruction. Let's call it, that's what missiles are, they're weapons of mass destruction. On Coast Guard vessels means that they're working under the auspices of the Navy, which means we are looking at wartime services or martial law, which we already know. We already know that the whole world's under fucking martial law, and especially the US. But there's another one of those little pieces of proof. Now let's talk about the area, okay? Because again, we have got some history here going on, just recent history that's very interesting, because just about every 6 months to a year, you'll get a push of articles about the Arctic. This is 2014. Canadian forces to stockpile military equipment in Arctic hubs for faster response in case of emergency. 2015. Canada to spend billions on Arctic military equipment, says the report. Now, when you get through this, the Canadian military is also looking to enhance its and we're talking billions of dollars they're planning on spending. The Canadian military is also looking to enhance its communication with the Arctic with the construction of 2 polar communication and weather satellites, which are estimated to cost $1.5 billion each. Now, weather satellites is interesting because weather satellites in this area of the world is a misnomer meaning spying. Alert Canada, the Basin Alert Canada, way the fuck up in the north, is a weather station. It's a spy station. It always has been. It has been since fucking the Second World War. So, you know, weather satellites, take out the word weather and just put spy. That's what it means. Additionally, the government is looking to improve its Arctic surveillance capabilities, especially since it's certainly not the only country vying for a slice of the Arctic riches. This is where we come in with everyone jumping on the bandwagon. In 2007, Russian explorers reached the bottom of the North Pole in a miniature submarine and planted the national flag to make a symbolic claim to their part of the Arctic. This was really, really funny. It is a titanium flag with Russian titanium flag that can't rust. They planted on what was the North Pole then. It's not the North Pole now because that's moved, but symbolically speaking. Since then, Russia's defense ministry has announced plans to build 13 aerodomes and 10 radar stations in Russia's north. Last month, Russia said it would consider protecting its national interests in the Arctic with military means if necessary. The constant military presence in the Arctic and a possibility to protect the state's interests by military means are regarded as an integral part of the general policy to guarantee national security. National security. Russia has a fuckload of oil, regardless of what mainstream media wants to tell you. Russia is so self-sufficient in oil and natural gas. They don't need fucking Arctic. They don't need to be going to the Arctic to get oil and gas. They have more than they know what to do with. But they've got to protect the state's interests to guarantee national security. Again, what is there up there? What is there up there? Canadian military deploys spooks against possible Arctic spies. This is 2015. And this is interesting because the one little statement in here, it says, the other unusual aspect of the fact Canada's top brass has for years insisted that the country faces no significant military threat in the Arctic. So if Canada's top military brass are saying it's the fucking Arctic, there's no military worries about threats. What's going on? What's going on? I hope you're asking this question because I'm telling you. Then U.S. builds up Arctic spy network as Russia and China increases their presence. This was 2015. This is right around the time when Obama went up to visit the Arctic and go make a big statement and prance around. It was ridiculous. It was such a photo op opportunity, and that's it. At the same time, there were Chinese ships, 5 Chinese ships seen off the north coast of Alaska. And they all went, oh, the Chinese ships are there, and Obama's up in Alaska, and oh my God. Which turned out to be nothing. And then, in 2014, though, the thing that changed this was the big game changer as far as I was concerned. It made me really take note of this, was when Denmark went to the United Nations and said, yeah, we're claiming the North Pole, and here's our geological surveys to prove that the North Pole belongs to Denmark. Now, why? Why? Well, it all has to do with Greenland. And let me tell you, if you haven't researched Greenland, is specifically the last 100 years, you have some interesting rabbit holes to jump down if you haven't researched it yet. Greenland, a lot of, especially during World War II and right up till now, interesting shit always going on in Greenland, and it is always top secret. But technically, Denmark owns Greenland. Kind of, sort of, but again, I'm seriously mean kind of, sort of. There's a lot of questions about how their treaty arrangement actually works. So this is the map that they gave. So you're looking at the top of the world, basically looking down on what should be purportedly the North Pole. And the area in red is now what Denmark is saying they own, which is ridiculous. And we really are talking ridiculous. Denmark is a teeny little country somewhere over here. And it's like, you know. But it was enough to make me stand up and go, wait 1 second, what's going on? Jump to modern times. Through all of this, like I said, you want to go do some research on Greenland, number one. And we did a show on this a few years ago on the One People show. It was back in 2015 spring. I'll put the link in with this. A little bit of information about Operation Nanook that started with the U.S. Navy in 1946. Some interesting shit going on. And Operation Nanook still takes place to this day. You want to look up Thule Air Force Base in Greenland. You want to look up where Ultima Thule is, and the legends of Thule, and of course the Thule Society, which is highly connected to the Nazis and everything that happened during the Second World War. Oh, that happened at the exact same time of all the shit was going down in Antarctica. Oh, it was also going down in Greenland. So you got a nice little rabbit hole there. If you want to go down it, there's some interesting shit. And further to that is this little tidbit that just came out this month. Denmark and Greenland agree to clean up the U.S. military waste. Denmark and its autonomous Arctic island of Greenland have signed an agreement to clean up U.S. military installations that were left to rust in the pristine landscape after the Cold War. The deal earmarks 180 million kroner, or $29 million over 6 years, for the cleanup. A 1951 deal between Copenhagen and Washington allowed the U.S. to build 33 bases and radar stations in Greenland, but the deal never specified who'd be the one who had to clean it all up. First off, Thule base, still open for business. Thule Base is so secret. During our discussions in 2015, I was contacted by two different people. One is a former Canadian Armed Forces communications officer, relatively high ranking, who was based up in Alert, Canada, who, when one of the pilots, American pilots, was flying over to Thule, decided she'd take a break. She wanted to go see Greenland. And she got on the plane and she flew over there. Now, high-ranking military officer visiting another base. They wouldn't let her basically in the door. It was like, here's the officer's mess. You can sit there. You can't go anywhere near the communications. It's top secret. You're not qualified. I was contacted by someone else whose father used to fly the planes that flew in and out of Thule Base, ferrying soldiers back and forth. And one of the things he ferried a lot of were soldiers who were completely mentally and physically destroyed, being taken from Thule Base down to mainland USA for treatment. And apparently a lot of these soldiers were in really, really bad shape. And again, to this day, getting information about Thule Air Force Base and what they're actually doing there and what they have been doing there since World War II, very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. And when you just think that apparently Denmark and Greenland just apparently agreed arbitrarily to spend $29 million to clean up the US's mess of the bases there, I smell a rat. Really? I smell a rat. And of course, Russia, this was April, had just opened up their first, come see our new military base, the Arctic Trefoil military base, is a virtual tour, and you come see no weapons, of course, you can't see the good stuff, but you can only see what they've got going on there. Everything's all about the Arctic. Why are they all making such a big deal? Why are they doing archaeological surveys of the Arctic? Why do they keep saying national security with the Arctic? Why do they keep talking about it's all about gas and oil when obviously we know it's nothing to do with gas and oil because no one can get the gas and oil out and make it work at $100 a barrel, let alone $40 and $60 a barrel. There's a lot of frickin' questions. And you have to giggle when this was the latest news story with the US talking all about the Arctic right now and how they're going to send all these ships. Brand spanking new warship. And I mean brand spanking new. This ship is so fucking new, it still has its umbilical cord attached. Took a trip up to Montreal and it's trapped there in the ice. If you can't get your ships out of the ice of Montreal's harbor, do you really think your ship's going to be any good running around the Arctic? Seriously? It's a joke. A complete fucking joke. The Arctic. And just to make things interesting, there was an 8.0 earthquake today, just off the coast of Alaska. Several hours ago. It was about 4 hours ago. And there was, oh no, they've taken the tsunami alert has been removed. They've taken, when I first screenshot it, there was still a tsunami alert in place. So, what the hell is really going on? What's going on in the Arctic? What's going on in the Antarctic? Whole lot of secrets. A whole lot of secrets. But I can guarantee you, they ain't got jack shit to do with going on. Anyways, that's it for me. Sorry, I was a bit long-winded today. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.